Hi, I'm Dr. Patrick Andersen of Madison Maximized Living. At no time is poor posture okay. Not as an elderly person, not as an active adult, not as an adolescent, and especially not as a child. Poor posture is a sign of spinal subluxation or misalignment, which can cause significant health issues. There's no better time to take care of a spinal condition than when it's beginning as a child and as the child grows. Most adult spinal issues actually started in childhood, even at birth. The birth process can injure the spine of both mother and child. As a child grows, they have many falls, and this is why children need to have their spine checked. Join co-host Stacy Hansen and myself as we cover kids, chiropractic, and raising healthy families, coming up next.
Welcome back to Maximize Living with Dr. Patrick Andersen. We're talking kids, chiropractic, and raising healthy families. So Dr. Pat, I know that adults go to the chiropractor, but I'm surprised to hear that it can work for babies and kids as well.
Well, kids and babies have spines too, and it's actually under a tremendous amount of stress in the birth process. It said 40 pounds of pressure or so. And actually 40 to 70% of kids will have subluxations or misalignments in their upper neck just from the birth process. So that really starts out the problem. And you know, if you think about it, if you want to prevent an adult problem, you want to go back to see when that adult spinal problem started. And it often started as kids or at birth. And that's why it's so critically important for babies and kids to be checked as they're growing. You know, as a twig is bent, so grows the tree. And so if you can catch it early, it can make a tremendous difference.
Yeah, it sounds like a critical time to be looking at it.
And yet we don't think about that. You think, oh, babies, adjustment of babies, oh no, you can't do that. But it actually is the ideal time to check them. It's very gentle and very effective. And kids respond very fast to care.
Now you mentioned subluxation. What is that? And how do you get it?
Subluxation, yep. Subluxation is that misalignment of the spine, an abnormal alignment of one segment compared to the next. There's 24 movable vertebrae, and they can shift out of place and put pressure on the spinal cord, brainstem, and spinal nerves. And it happens from things like birth, or children fall some 2,000 times by the time age 2. You know, they bounce fairly well, I guess, and they can handle it, but that's still a lot of falls. But also keep in mind that this is a developing spine. The spine doubles in length in the first year of life.
Wow, in the
Imagine
first year.
if your spine doubled in length in a year. You know, you go from 5 foot to 7.5 foot in a year. That would probably cause some growing pains.
I would imagine it does. Yeah, so it truly is really a critical time to be doing that. When you do an evaluation for a kid or a baby, what's it like?
Well, it's a little louder usually. No.
I bet.
It's actually quite gentle and quite fun. We'll check the baby's leg length, hip ranges of motion, palpate the spine, palpate the neck, feel the sutures in the skull. Number of different orthopedic tests can be done, not as many as there are on adults. And then we'll find areas where the spine is tense or not moving properly, and then we can perform an adjustment to receive the joint.
So what kinds of things do you see parents bringing their kids in for?
Yeah, well, there's all kinds of things that they're coming in for. First off, just to even get pregnant, most people don't realize that there's a lot of chiropractors who have patients who were able to get pregnant when they couldn't, once they started their chiropractic care.
Really? That's another one I haven't heard of before. It's amazing how many things it affects.
I think 3 cases in my career.
Really?
Where they just said, absolutely, I couldn't get pregnant. And now after a couple of months, I got pregnant. What's going on?
Wow.
And so, but colic is a real common problem, as is ear infections, poor sleep habits, poor elimination, even breastfeeding issues have been shown to be helpful when the child is adjusted. And then as they get older, there's more problems with like sports injuries, long sitting, more sleep issues. So there's quite a few things, but posture is critically important. Be checking and make sure they're not growing abnormally.
So if you've got a child that's experiencing some of these things, it may be worth getting checked out. And it sounds like in any case, because they've all gone through some sort of birth process, and it's
and most people don't get through unscathed. There's something that has gone on with a fall, a sleep position, a birth trauma, stress as they're growing up. You imagine just school stress and sitting for long periods of time, bad posture. So there's lots of different events that can cause subluxation.
Well, stay with us. We'll have more on kids and chiropractic right after the break. Have your questions for Dr. Pat answered on an episode of Maximize Living. Send your email to drpat@wi57.tv. Welcome back to Maximize Living with Dr. Patrick Andersen. We're talking today about kids and chiropractic and raising healthy families. Right before the break, we were talking about some of the things that you've seen parents bring their kids in for, and it sounds like there's a lot of common concerns. You mentioned like colic and some eating
birth
problems.
Trauma itself.
Sure.
It's very common for a baby to be in their car seat and their heads will only turn to one side and not moving properly to both sides. That's a telltale sign that there's issues. But torticollis is another issue where the child will be locked in one position. They can't turn.
Okay.
Called torticollis. And it's interesting that 50% of kids will have back pain by the time they're 18. 15% will have significant back issues.
And I bet the backpacks at school aren't helping that. I bet you're not a big fan of that.
Yes, that's definitely an issue.
Yeah.
But they'll also have digestion elimination issues, sleeping issues, bedwetting. Bedwetting often responds well to chiropractic care. Behavioral issues is a huge one. Kids just calm down when they get care. So there's nerve irritation. Imagine someone poking or prodding you in your nerve. You get pretty irritating. It's hard to calm down, to sleep, and to behave appropriately. So it's really fascinating to watch these changes in these kids happen. And then, of course, sports injuries. But I've got a question for you, Stacy.
Reversing the roles here.
Yes. Who's responsible for your health? Is it Obamacare, your insurance company, your doctor?
I would say none of the above. I would say I am.
Yeah. And who can do the most for your health?
Probably me, because I'm there every day.
You know, we're so used to thinking, oh, it's genetics, I have this disease. But really the new science is called epigenetics. It's how you take care of yourself that keeps those genes that may not be the best in some respects, some diseases, but it keeps them from expressing themselves. They're kept in check until a lot of stress through deficiency or subluxation or dehydration or some trauma, mental stress, unsheaths that gene and then it starts to bring out disease. So there's a lot through that lifestyle. So it's very important. And who's responsible for your children's health?
I would say the parents.
Yeah,
until
we
they're
don't
old
realize
enough.
that kids don't have a choice whether they go to a chiropractor or not. You know, the parents have to be knowledgeable and understand that what a great time to help your kids not have the same adult spinal problems that you have or could have, or parents. Both parents have problems. It's really important to check the kids early so they aren't harnessed with a chronic problem that could have been managed early on. And another question for you, how do you know if you have a subluxation?
Well, you know, I think that your first thought would be pain probably, but I know from talking to you that there isn't always pain.
Right, maybe half the time.
Yeah, so you wouldn't really know, I guess.
You really don't know, and people are surprised all the time. That's what we see when we touch a baby's spine or a child's spine. There'll be tender spots and they'll pull back a little bit and you'll see, oh, that's a problem area.
Interesting. So you don't really know. So you've got some studies where children have been helped by chiropractic care. There's a history of this.
Yeah, there's a long list of studies. Here's one, 132 parents with children with colic found 91% of them improved after 2 or 3 adjustments. So there is relief for colic. It's well studied throughout the literature.
That's good news for parents suffering from that.
Bedwetting showed 50% improvement. Asthma, after 2 months of chiropractic care, 90% showed an improved quality of life. So if your child has asthma, which is really epidemic these days, adjustments can be really helpful. Earaches, 93% of patients improved with the ear infections. ADHD, University of Mississippi did a study and found and concluded that it's potent to help their children and it should be investigated further. Same with autism. Research was saying that, the journal Explorer was saying, it's prudent to bring your child to a chiropractor if they're autistic and do a trial of care. So there's a lot of things like that, that we're dealing with a nervous system and an immune system that if under stress from subluxation isn't going to work right. So if we remove that stress, the child can develop better.
That's interesting to know. I mean, it's worth a try, especially if you can avoid taking some of the medications and things. If you can find relief.
It's sad to think now that 25% of all kids under 18 are on a prescription that they're going to take the rest of their life.
Wow.
Something
so
just doesn't
yeah.
seem right about that. Couldn't we do something better preventive-wise, nutrition-wise, adjustment-wise?
Yeah, you would certainly hope so. That seems like that's climbed. So what's the biggest thing that you have noticed? We'll talk about that after the break. I'll give you some time to think about that. So stay with us. We'll have that right after the break. Have your questions for Dr. Pat answered on an episode of Maximize Living. Send your email to drpat@wi57.tv. Welcome back to Maximize Living with Dr. Patrick Andersen. We're talking today about kids, chiropractic, and raising healthy families. And Dr. Pat, I asked you a question before the break. What's the biggest thing that you have noticed in your experience with kids in chiropractic?
Well, they love it. At first they might
Really?
be a little, don't like it, but before you know it, they're the first one in the family up on the table, me first.
Really?
Yeah, and they really look forward to it. And the best, if I could use one word, I would say kids thrive with chiropractic. If they're irritable, not behaving well, not sleeping well, not doing well in school, check out your kids for possible nerve interference in their spinal structure. It shows quite quickly. School improvement, sports injury improvement, sports improvement, better functionality in sports. I had one about 10-year-old girl who gave her first adjustment, and then the parents took her to a softball game, and they noticed she wasn't running like this to first base, and they said she's never run like that before. So there's lots of anecdotal things like that that show. We'll see leg length improvement. We'll see postural improvement. They start sitting up naturally instead of being constantly slumped, which is not healthy.
Right. So you've seen it in action.
Oh yeah, it's
So
fast. It's fast. One girl had a really poor posture and just didn't get along. She was mid-back pain, and she came in for a month over Christmas break, and then she went back to school, and her coach says to her, "What happened to you? You're totally different." So kids respond quickly. That's what's fun.
So they respond quickly. Does it take as much care overall for a kid as it would for an adult?
No, it's surprisingly much less. They're more flexible, they're more adaptable. A typical kid pattern of adjustment might be a couple times a week for a couple weeks, and then once a week for a couple weeks, and then watch them grow every other week or some even once a month. It's the best thing you can do for your children.
Wow, and you're seeing the difference.
And it's noticeable to the parents. They come back and tell me things. He was never nice to his sister before, or things like that. My kid finally acts like he likes me after,
So it makes your whole life easier, really.
But it's just nerve interference is a subtle thing that disrupts your personality and it keeps you being your best potential.
So you might have a lot of good kids out there that are being mistaken for, troublemaker
exactly.
kids. Yeah. So something to get checked out. So these kids, there's a lot of challenges these days, a lot of things that maybe we didn't have as kids growing up. It's a tough world out there for them.
Well, one of them is text neck.
Yeah.
Texting all the time. It's hard to text with your head up, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
But that's really hard on the neck. The stress is a lot more. Kids don't move as much. That's motion is critical for the developing brain. So that's very important to get out and play and get the fresh air. Lack of sleep, most kids are an hour and a half less sleep than they should have.
Mm-hmm.
And they're overstimulated. And then kids having kids' brains do stupid stuff.
Yeah.
They don't understand why they do that, because your frontal cortex doesn't really fully develop until you're about 23. So you'll do something, you really don't know why you did it, but can do stupid stuff and get hurt. Yeah. I remember I used to run off the end of my porch at home in Wisconsin Rapids and jump as far as I could. And I was trying to set a record, and the porch was about 3 feet off the ground. Well, as I went jump farther and farther, I finally landed pretty hard. Finally figured out maybe I shouldn't jump that far.
Did you break the record though?
Oh yeah, of course.
Of course he did. So some of these things are making me think about TV though, overstimulation, sitting too much.
Oh, there's some fascinating things on TV. If kids watch 3 hours of TV or more, they're 1/3 of them will be likely to carry out aggressive acts. If you watch, for every 30 minutes of TV that a person watches, they're 21% more likely to be obese.
Unless they're watching this show.
Unless they're watching this show, because we'll have you working out. And if you watch 5 hours of TV a day, I'm sorry, greater than 6 hours of TV a day, you'll likely have a 5-year less life expectancy in the studies.
Wow.
But the problem for kids is that they don't tell the difference between real life very well and what's on television. So they think their brain interprets that as really happening. So there's a lot of post-traumatic stress in kids, in a sense, from seeing things on TV. So watching that violence is really important to keep that down, because the brains don't interpret it well.
Makes sense. Well, stay with us. We'll have more on raising families right after the break. Have your questions for Dr. Pat answered on an episode of Maximize Living. Send your email to drpat@wi57.tv. Welcome back to Maximize Living with Dr. Patrick Andersen. We're talking today about kids, chiropractic, and raising healthy families. We talked about some of the dangers of TV watching, too much TV watching for kids right before the break. Kind of leads into the childhood obesity epidemic that we're seeing too.
Exactly. The highest incident of obesity in children are those that watch 4 or more hours on television a day. And the TV actually will cause you to want to eat more junk food.
Really?
And have more positive attitude towards junk food. So it's a big deal to watch that. But the obesity is hard on a child's body. We really have taken a wrong step, I believe, nutritionally when we say lower your fats. We should eat healthy fats and lower the carbs, because carbs are what's driving our obesity epidemic.
So how are kids doing with nutrition? I know they've tried in school lunches. Has it been making a difference?
You know, it's coming. It's a little bit better. At least I think it's leveled off. But 10% of high school students have adequate nutrition. Wow. So it only takes one nutrition deficiency to build a problem, a disease eventually. So it really comes down to, there is no solution. If you hate veggies, you hate good health. You just have to like it. So learn to like them. And it's an acquired taste. I think if the parents say they love this, the kids will start to like it. It's amazing what you can hide, in food.
Right.
Like we have mac and cheese made out of hearts of palm and things like that. And so there's a lot of things you can hide when you start making a big deal out of it. With my kids, I taught them guacamole, and now they still eat it as adults. They just love guacamole, and avocado a day is one of the best things you can do for healthy fats and healthy food.
Yeah, sometimes with kids you just can't mention that it's healthy.
Yeah, you got to trick them.
Yeah. Oh, this is really good, but don't mention the H word. So let's talk about kids and stress as well, because it's a different world today that they're growing up in.
They've got a lot more coming at them than when you grew up or when I grew up. Their bodies don't handle the stress. They end up taking more internally than they should. So stress is a big factor with all the opinions, being on the internet all the time, the bullying, just so much coming at the kids with all the time on texting and screen time, and then not enough body movement just increases stress. So that's one of the things adjustments are so good for. Get that stress calmed down. It stops that reaction in the body by calming the system back down.
Now, you've talked a little bit before about vaccinations. What's your opinion on that?
Well, my opinion is people should have a choice. This is probably the most touchy subject there is. You are absolutely an evil person if you don't believe in vaccines. But yet there are some questions. We have 69 doses of 16 vaccines. The CDC, in a study, in research I've done, a lot of the doctors in the CDC don't even want to use the same schedule that they're recommending. And there's a problem with adverse reactions. Actually, an injury fund, every vaccine has a part of the money, like 50 or 70 cents, goes towards the vaccine injury fund. And to date, there's $3.5 billion paid out in the vaccine injury fund. So we aren't allowed to ask questions on it. And that's my question, how come? How come we can't ask questions? And so it's the only drug that is allowed to be given without any risk for the manufacturer. So there's questions on quality. There's questions how much mercury, how much aluminum is healthy. And there's questions on how many doses can you give at once. I have a patient who was given 5 doses at once, and her mother swears this is when her son became autistic, within 2 weeks. So there's more out there and more questions, I think, that need to be answered. And a good source is Ty Bollinger, The Truth About Vaccines. So I'm not saying my opinion. I think everyone should look at it for themselves and see, is this something that's good for my child? Is this something I want? And really weigh the risks and study it. So Ty Bollinger has a series on the internet called The Truth About Vaccines, and I think every parent should look at that and study more.
All right, well, we have to go to break, but we'll have more in just a moment. Have your questions for Dr. Pat answered on an episode of Maximize Living. Send your email to drpat@wi57.tv.
Thank you for watching our show on kids, chiropractic, and raising healthy families. It's important to bring your child to a chiropractor after birth and while they are growing. Adjustments improve their health and help prevent adult spinal issues. It is one of the most important things you can do for your child's health. It is often stated, as a twig bends, so grows the tree. Correcting subluxations or misalignments early in life can prevent a long history of problems and pain as an adult. I could not impress on you more the importance of having your family's spines checked by a chiropractor. Please give our office a call at Madison Maximize Living at 608-833-1282. For Maximize Living, I'm Dr. Patrick Andersen, and until next time, live well and God bless.